Hey everyone, this episode is gonna be in English.
I definitely have been the anxious attachment style. And the interesting thing is, after years, decades of doing this work, it wasn't until just a handful of years ago that I had this kind of massive light bulb moment. It was like, oh my God.
Willkommen bei Hungry, dem Podcast für alle, die hungrig auf Kreativität, Inspiration und neue Ideen sind. Ich bin Simon Heeger, Mitgründer von 2, Musikproduzent und Unternehmer. In jeder Folge lade ich spannende Gäste zu mir ein und während wir aufs Essen warten, reden wir über die Themen, die uns antreiben. Kreativität, Mindset und den Weg zu beruflicher und persönlicher Erfüllung. My guest today is Spiritual Men's Coach and Teacher Zat Elias. Essen ist auf dem Weg, also let's go. How are you? Where are you right now?
I am in Southern California, right on the coast in Southern California.
Cool.
Yeah.
And like for all the people who are listening, who are you and what's your mission in life?
Okay.
It's a big question to start off with.
It is, yeah. I am someone who's been on the path, my own, I'm a student. I would say first and foremost, I'm a student on the path of growth and transformation and healing and awareness and consciousness. And my mission is to support men. It's been my main focus now for almost 20 years, and just helping men to find a more of a depth in how they live their life so they can be better men in their relationships, and their intimate relationships, and as fathers and as brothers, and give back to the world. I mean, that's everyone, I think, in this work is ultimately trying to make the world a better place, a more sane place, a place with less suffering for all beings. Yeah.
Wow, that's a great start. But why specifically men? Why did you and how did you come to that path, and how did you decide, that you thought, okay, man is something like spirituality for men is something I want to put my focus on?
Yeah, I did it a little bit begrudgingly, to be honest. So I, kind of going into my story a little bit, raised in an angry household with, a lot of, not physical, but, fighting was the way, anger was the way. My dad was trained in that, and his father was trained in that. And so grew up in that. And so when I got older in my first relationship, all that anger came out, as our relationships are the place where our relational issues show up. And so really, out of necessity, I got into my own work, like looking at my emotional reactivity, my anger, my rage, and lack of skill. I'd say I was always spiritual from a young age, but probably around 17 is when 16, 17 is when I really started getting into it. And then by the time I had my first real relationship at around 20, all that stuff starts surfacing. And a friend said to me, I was in a stairwell in Indiana. I remember it very well. And I was talking about how terrible my relationship was. And he said, man, you got to do men's work.
Okay.
And so this was, let's see how many years ago this was about 40 years ago, right? And I was like, men's work? Like, no one talked about men's work back then. And he basically told me about this group of men that work on their anger that keeps them suffering. And so I said, okay, I'll do it. And so I went and I started doing men's work. And from there, just the path unfolded, and have been intensely involved in that. And many other, I've been a practicing Buddhist for 24 years. So I've had my same teacher, my same Rinpoche for 24 years. So that's been really the foundation with the men's work and psychology, spiritual psychology, and so on and so forth. But, we usually enter the work because of our own suffering. And then once we gain some experience in that, we say, oh, I can help others.
Right.
I can help others with that. And so when I first started, I was a yoga teacher. I was a meditation teacher. I was a spiritual musician. I was doing like sacred sound music. You know, I started playing music when I was very young, fourth grade. And I work with people. I work with men and women. And I kept having this nudge, like, you got to work with men. But I was like, nah, I don't want to work with just men. I just want to work with men and women. And I was in a room with about 300 women. There was maybe one or two men in there. It was like this coaching conference. And the microphone was going around. So I grabbed the mic. I said, yeah, this is what I do. But, you know, I'd have this thought of working with men, but I don't think that's really what I want to do. And the whole entire crowd of 300 women erupted.
Really?
This is like 20 something years ago, right? They erupted in, oh God, just like screams, like, you have to. I was like, whoa, it was pretty intense, you know? And so that kind of stuck with me. And it was probably just a little while later that I made the decision to just focus on working with men, because I know being a man better than being a woman.
I can relate. I really can relate starting the work in a moment of pain, and where you really need kind of healing. But I'm curious, what do you think is the most common issue that men run into in your work? Like is there something that comes over again and again, and is there any way to solve that?
I think that the issues that men have are the same issues that men have always had, right? It's the lack of emotional mastery. It is the being uninitiated into manhood, knowing what being a man means, knowing what it means to live, you know, with these healthy masculine qualities. It is relationality issues, not being relational leaders, and numbing out, disconnection. And then, of course, that's amplified by modern society with everything from social media to expectations of how a man's supposed to be. Of course, there was a pushback from the Me Too movement, which brought in a whole other element of men men showing masculinity is toxic in and of itself. And so there's this big, bifurcation between, I want to be sensitive, right? I want to be a sensitive feeling man, but on the other hand, I'm supposed to be tough and masculine and strong. And there's no markers, there's no guidelines. And it's, this is why men have been gathering in ceremony, in groups for thousands of years, is to chew on these ideas and how to help each other be better men. And so that's what I do in the men's work.
You mentioned earlier, before we started recording, that you're just coming back from that right in front of you there's an amazing intensive where you're gonna meet with different men and in a community. Can you talk about that a little bit?
We have our men's retreat coming up in Mexico, November 9th through 15th, with my teaching partner Saul David Ray, who's a brilliant teacher and yogi. This is our yearly men's retreat, which is in the most stunning, beautiful, tropical setting in a little area right on the coast, right on the water in Mexico. And it is probably the single most powerful retreats that we do that I've been a part of in my entire life, and the men that come there. So any man that's wanting a serious reset and recharge and shift in their life, whether it's working with what am I doing in my life, to my purpose, to, toxicity they're carrying in their emotions and woundings, to, intimacy and fathering issues, all these kinds of things. You don't have to be broken. You don't have to have a problem, but we go on retreat. This is what traditions do, spiritual traditions. We go away, we remove ourselves from the distractions, from the noise. Not to say that we don't work through those in our real life, but we need time at least once a year to step out of that, to come into a place where we can excavate, go internal, get feedback from other men on the path and how we're showing up, work on those core issues, work on those wounds, and practice.
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
about entering into a place of practice so you can bring that confidence, that depth, that greater self-realization into your life so you can live your best life, your most heroic life, whether that's focusing on success or money or career or purpose or relationship or family or love, or just, feeling like you have the capacity to handle the intensity of modern life.
Mm. And I'm a testimonial to that, because I've been to one of these intensives with you in Southern California, and it's one of the most one of those experiences I won't ever forget, and like it's really stuck in my head. But I have to say, people asked me about it because it had such a big impact on my life, and it's so hard until today to really explain what happened during those couple of days. And but I'm curious, is there anything you can tell about these communities? What's actually happening? What kind of practices you're doing? And I know for a fact, I thought maybe it's a little meditation and it's a little breath work, and it's a little bit of that, but it's so much more than that. And I'm wondering if you can maybe explain to the men who are listening right now what is actually happening in these intensives.
Yeah, I think it's hard to explain what we're doing because it's out of context. Meaning, if I just say this is what we're doing, you have to be in the context to understand and what it could possibly do. You can't explain what it'll do without actually doing it, right? But I could say that if you imagine entering a dojo, right? That's a term, or like Zen practice, or they use it in martial arts. You enter a dojo to practice. And the dojo is not about being perfect. It's about practicing over and over and over. And you make mistakes and you get feedback. And when you're in a compassionate, safe dojo where you can practice with all of your internal turmoil, your challenges, and then allow yourself the opportunity to have things arise in you that you normally ignore, right? Our underlying kind of script that keeps us going, whether it's limiting beliefs about our value, our worthiness, whether it's, old imprints around how we're supposed to be in relationship, how we're supposed to be as a man. All those things, when those are ignored, it's the basic idea in shadow work. What you don't own, meaning what you don't take ownership for, kind of runs the show. It owns you. And you're just kind of on autopilot for your whole life. And that's how most humans live their life, is with this underlying script and belief system that is a filter through how we see the world. And we respond based on all the underlying programming, right? Just like a computer. You put the programming in and it operates how you told it to operate.
Yeah.
So all of our wounding, our upbringing, all that stuff is our foundational program. And that's where racism comes from. That's where, all of our neuroses come from. I mean, I could go deeper into that, but in the retreat is a place for you to kind of step out of that for a moment and kind of get a little bit of insight into the scripts that run you and begin to shift, transform, and heal those so you can respond to life and everything that's happening in life from a place more of art, of artistry.
Okay.
From your heart, from a place of love.
That's a great, it's great that you mention art, because this podcast is about creativity and about the hunger for life and for inspiration. And I wonder, how does the men that you teach, how do the men that you teach benefit in their creative life from your work? How does it make you more creative?
I mean, for me, and how I was trained, I mean, it's all about becoming an artist of being.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, think about this. If you're raised in a family with a very specific point of view on how life is, how it should be, what you're supposed to do, who you're supposed to marry, how you're supposed to act, what you're supposed to eat, all of that's programming. And that's why we go through life, so many people, and especially men, because they are so performative, meaning in order for them to feel some worth, we have to complete acts, things, projects that make us feel like we've fulfilled something, right?
Yeah.
And so when you are just living from family expectations, imprints, programs of how you're supposed to be, we don't really have access to a deep wellspring of creativity, because it's just coming from our mind, from a script on how we're supposed to be. And that's why people work in a bank their whole life when instead they'd rather be playing music. Or even an artist who has writer's block, or a musician who is creating music based on the desire for success and money only, but not really tapping into that deep wellspring of creativity. And so to become an artist of being means how you move through life, how you respond to life and everything that's happening. And that's about breaking concepts down. I mean, if we think about great artists, what were they? They're all groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, do you agree with me?
100%.
What is groundbreaking? Meaning they're breaking new ground because they had a creative inspiration and something moved through them, and they let themselves become the vessel for that art. And I'm not saying that somebody who has issues and wounds can't do that. I mean, of course, some of the greatest minds are highly neurotic.
I was about to say, sometimes it helps to have wounds.
It does, because we can channel that into our art. And so when we become an artist of being, we look at life more as like a canvas of how we can respond and create our life, not just based on fear. I mean, you see these, I don't know if you see this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk.
Oh, yeah, I know him.
And he talks about, he's like, can I use curse words here?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because he does all the time, right?
He's like, I don't give a fuck what you put out. Just fucking get on the camera and say something, right? Which in essence is you like breaking through your own limitations of you wanting to be accepted and you wanting to look good and feel good. And, this is the radical way of the artist of being. And so when you have the courage to explore yourself and excavate and shift out of just a programmed mind, we access a deeper wellspring of creativity. I mean, what is it that said that when we're in contraction, when we're in fear, that the creative brain is not turned on?
Okay.
Right. It's
when we're, I agree. Yeah.
When we're open and relaxed. I mean, when we're contracted and we're trying to write, someone who's a writer, you have to let it all go. You have to burn it all down to allow that creative flow to come back in. And it's the same thing in relationship.
Right.
How we respond in relationship. But
so starting to get away from fear, is that like part of your work? Is don't be afraid and just, let it out and flow? Or
I mean, absolutely. It's about working with fear, because I mean, that's one of our greatest assets. From the Buddhist perspective, fear is not something to ignore or squash down or to avoid. It's actually a gateway to greater awareness, greater freedom, greater wisdom. And so in Buddhist tradition, we use fear as this practice around your fear is your demon, and you befriend your demon because it has information for you. There's underlying information. It's a doorway for you. And so, kind of the basic idea in somatic work is to become aware of what's moving through your body, because most of us ignore it. We just steamroll through life, right? We just push through life. I just got to make more money.
In the head. Yeah, right.
In the head. I mean, that's the biggest issue for so many men, is we just live in the head. And the head is good for, certain things like running a control board in a music studio or driving a car. But it's not really helpful for being a good relational person and being a good father, so that your children can feel your heart, or your partner can feel your presence, which has them feel safe, which deepens your relationship, which ultimately ends up in you being more fulfilled in your life when you have healthy, fulfilling relationships.
I 100% agree. And I mean, there are studies that relationships are so important for your health as well. And if you don't have good relationships, it's worse than smoking and
that's right.
And stuff like that. But I'm curious. We just mentioned fears, and I think one of the things from your Buddhist tradition, it sounds like, is also follow your fears and follow where it comes from and where what it does to you. And I'm curious, what is one of your fears? Is there something in your heart that you're still fighting with, and maybe working on with your own techniques and tactics to maybe get rid of it or live with it? If you want to share something.
I mean,
like that.
I've mastered fear, so I don't have any more fear anymore. It's completely gone. It's obliterated now.
I was about to say that can't be true.
That's a joke. No, I mean, I definitely run towards being anxious. And if you know anything about, your attachment style, without getting too much in attachment theory, I definitely have been the anxious attachment style. And and the interesting thing is, after years, decades of doing this work, it wasn't until just a handful of years ago that I had this kind of massive light bulb moment. It was like, oh my God, I'm a highly anxious person.
Okay, so you weren't really aware of that before.
I didn't have that kind of crystal clarity. So what happened for me is I got that thing ringing in the ears.
Mm-hmm. Tinnitus?
Tinnitus. Some people call it tinnitus, but it's pronounced tinnitus. And that just amplified the anxiousness that I was carrying. Because when you have that ringing, when that started, it activated my anxiousness, like, oh my God, this is nonstop. Oh my God, I'm going to have this forever. And it was terrifying.
Oh, I bet.
And yeah, it really was. It was absolutely terrifying. It completely, like, I had to use, it was a very hard road. It was probably about 4 or 5 months of intensive work that I had to do to get myself out of that anxiousness. Now,
so it wasn't a physical thing. It was more like from your mind, basically, like a pseudo.
Well, you mean the ringing in the ears? Who knows what started it? There's all kinds of different theories. Some people say it's COVID. Some people say it's, the mainstream doctors will tell you it's because of a loss of hearing, and then your body reproduces sound in your brain. Other people say it's just from, anxiety and fear. There's all sorts of different reasons, but it didn't matter because it was still there. And so the long story short around that is that that my anxiousness came to a head really strong, and I had to face it in a new way and realize, okay, I have a deep wellspring of anxiety that I live with in my daily life. And so it just gave me kind of a new focus on working with my fear and anxiety, and really kind of increasing my focus on working with it, increasing my desire to work with it, and really tackling. And so I still have anxiousness every day. It's in my body. Okay. I wake with it, but I wake and I work with it.
Oh yeah.
First thing that I do.
You don't push it away.
No, it's there, brother. It's here right now. It's in my body. It's like an underlying tone. But the work of a practitioner is to not ignore, not suppress, not oppress, not avoid, but learn to be with in a completely different orientation. And so the first thing I do when I wake up and I feel a trigger of anxiety in my body, it's in my body, is I smile.
Wow. Okay.
So that's just my absolute first morning practice that I do when I realize I'm awake. I go, and that signals to the brain, right? When you smile, it signals to the brain
that be happy.
That I am, that's joy moving through my body. And then I move right into a gratitude practice. I just move into being, I'm alive. I literally activate gratitude in my body because I am absolutely grateful to be awake and alive another day, and when you have children like you do, like, I'm so glad I get to be here with this beautiful beings and to share space with them and my partner. And so those are the first two things when I wake. And then I finish I have other things that I do in my morning practice. I support my body, right? Because that anxiousness lives in the body. It could be due to gut dysbiosis. You have bad bacteria and just all sorts of things that can add to it. And so I just try to work on it from a from a holistic perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's amazing, and I think that's really the way to do it. Like fighting, not fighting it, but really accepting it, and that's really powerful. But I'm sure there are a bunch of your students, including me, who say, "Well, I have so much going on. I have a job. I have kids. I'm trying to, see my friends every now and then. There's no time for that. That's like the least of my priorities." What do you tell those kind of people, those kind of men?
I mean, I understand. There's been many days, weeks, months in my life where I jump out of bed and I'm running to do my tasks. But if you're not working on a few core areas of your life, all the tasks that you are going to do are in essence going to be less fruitful, less effective, and you're not going to actualize yourself to your full potential if you prioritize your doing over your being. I mean, if you look at every great teacher, you look at some of the greatest leaders, whether we're talking about leaders of industry or business or tech giants who are, and I'm not talking about all of them. There's a select few,
There's
but
some, yeah.
Working on your energy. Number one, if you don't have a healthy body, your mind's not going to function well, right? So if you're not exercising, if you're not doing health protocols, if you're not taking supplements to balance yourself, if you're not detoxing, if you're not getting enough steps in, if you're not sweating, if you're not moving your lymphatic system, whatever, all these different health protocols, if you're not working on your core energy, then you're not going to do very well in work or in love.
Right.
So I use these three ideas, which I love, come from Brian Johnson: energy, work, and love. So if you are working on your core foundation, which is your energy, your health, your vitality, if you're just focused on making money, and I don't care what age you are, if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, the older you get, even the more important it gets. But if you just wake up and you just try to steamroll through life by just full force, full power, kicking ass, crushing it, the kind of language you hear in corporate, like, let's crush it, let's kill it.
Yeah.
Very masculine language, kind of hunter language. But there has to be time to gather in council. There has to be time to gather in an initiatory space for you to have a strong foundation of being. Because if you don't, then what happens? People burn out. They get heart attacks. They get sick. They get all kinds of, neurodegenerative, like the list goes on and on and on, cholesterol, every kind of health issue, right? And so as a foundational practice, we work on our health and vitality. Our secondary practice is, how can I show up in work today in the most effective and mindful and conscious way so that I can be fulfilled and be effective.
Right.
And then the last piece is love and relationship, being a relational leader. And this is one of the core issues that partners of men, whether it's in a gay or straight relationship, experience when men are not present, when men are not conscious, when men are just coming from the program of performing and completing tasks that they don't feel their partners. And then that relationship suffers, and then breakup, divorce, and
more suffering.
Correct.
And that's actually something I wanted to talk about as well. You mentioned like being present in love, and one of things that you work with is sexual energy, which is like still like a taboo topic. But why do you think it's such a taboo thing? Why do you think people don't talk about that kind of energy and sexuality with men?
Yeah, that's a deep question. Well, there's many reasons. We can go back to the early days of the church and how a person's sexuality was
something bad.
They're right, correct. It's something to ignore, repress. From the perspective of, we'll say, the path of growth, the path of awakening, our sexual energy is our core foundational human energy, right?
Right. Yeah.
For a man, in one ejaculation, you have enough power in there to, birth, millions of beings. So
Right.
if you think about the power of our sexuality, and if you look back through history at some of the most heinous crimes, what drove those crimes?
Usually some kind of relational and sexual
Right? Rape, pillage,
fight
and
topic.
plunder,
Yeah.
not being able to control one's sexual urges and
Huh.
being unfulfilled in that. And that shows up as in men's work from the data perspective. We call that the first stage. When you have sexual energy that you don't know how to relate to your sexual energy, you go to powering over others, right? And so that's why, in maybe college, men talk about, well, how many women have you sleep with, right? It's this performative thing rather than having your sexual energy be there for you to go deep, like in depth with another being and experience a depth of being and awakening to love, being an expression of love, using your sexuality as an expression of love and connection. And so men who've come into the work, I have seen some phenomenal and absolutely mind-blowing things that men have gone through, whether it's sexual conditioning.
What does that mean?
Well, from certain religious traditions, men have come in, said, have talked about how sex has just, and their sexuality, their sexual energy is just filled with shame, right? Because of religious programming, whatever they're told, you're not supposed to have sex before marriage, or sex is dirty, or, even to, if you think about, like I think about growing up, and when boys masturbate, they hide away in a dark closet or a bathroom, and they do it as quickly as possible. Or nowadays it's looking at porn and seeing a complete misrepresentation of how sex is, right? Like the violent sexual acts that you'll see online. That becomes kind of the marker for what sex is.
Right.
And so that becomes very, very limiting and repressive in how we relate to our sexuality in our later life. So yes, we use the idea of using our sexuality in a healthy way to create more depth and intimacy in our relationship, because more depth and intimacy in a relationship ultimately means more fulfillment, more love, more connection, which has us lead, longer, healthier lives and have better connections. Because what is life? Life is nothing but relationality, relating to people, places, friends, family. And when you're not good at relating, we tend to suffer more. I mean, that's my constant practice. Constantly looking at how can I be a better relational being.
Right. Well, that's powerful. Thanks for sharing that. As you know, I recently became a father again. I have a son now, and of course, I wanna avoid him going through a lot of pain and being like a proper man, and being proud of being a man and without any toxic masculinity. Is there anything I should really pay attention to when raising my son? I mean, that's a big question, but if there's anything that comes to mind where, I'm trying to be the best role model, of course, that's something that I take very serious, but is there something specific that comes to mind where I should pay attention to?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, there's obviously no one specific thing that you can do, but just the fact that you're interested in being a better man is an important thing that you model, right? I mean, I know that my son does what I do, not what I say.
Good.
And so that's why my focus is on just being a better man, being a better father. I think one of the biggest things that I learned in the parenting, which is the same in relationship, is one of the things we do as parents is we try to get our children to stop having emotions. right? So if they're throwing a tantrum, if you're in a restaurant, if you're at home and they're upset and they're screaming, we try to stop it.
Right.
We like, hey, whoa, calm down.
Exactly.
Hang on. There's no reason to cry. And so that was my first big, we studied the RIE method, which is a method that comes from Magda Gerber, RIE method, which then is fused into, all these modern parenting and modern parenting psychology that's out there now. But one of the biggest thing that sticks with me and when I work with fathers is to help men to be able to be with their child's emotion. I'm not saying, and like some guys will say, well, you just let your kids scream like a wild man in a restaurant. You have to teach them. You have to teach them discipline. And you have to not let them be in control. Well, we know that, overpowering over your child and squashing their emotional expression just has them have more crazy wounding that has them act out later in life the same way that I was raised. If I said anything out of line, I'd be in trouble. I'd be screamed at. I'd be sent to my room. And that didn't work out very good. So
don't do that.
Being able to be with your child's emotion, and what the best way I can explain that is it's the same in intimate relationship, is to relate slowly, to parent slowly. Most of us, when our child has a great amount of emotion, we try to get the emotion to stop as quickly as possible, right? Just stop. Just hang on. Just we want it to end quickly. Even if we're trying to be calm, we're trying to get them to stop being emotional as quickly as possible. And my wife is like the greatest practitioner of this. I mean, she helps me with this still all the time. What if you could allow your child to have the safety to have emotional expression?
Yeah.
And when they're with a regulated nervous system, when the father's nervous system is regulated and not in hyper anxious or hyper numbed or trying to stop the child, then that child's nervous system's the child's nervous system regulates more quickly. So if you're dysregulated, if you're freaked out, if you're stressed out and charged out, and you come home from work and your child starts screaming and crying, and you're like, just shut up. What are you teaching them?
Well, nothing great. Well, it's wrong to be themselves, pretty much.
Exactly. That's one of a million different interpretations that they can make meaning out of that.
I understand. So it's really like an argument again for being present yourself, really doing the work yourself to be more present for yourself and also for your kid then.
Yeah, it's really about becoming a practitioner of learning how to regulate your own nervous system, which I'm not saying is easy. I'm not saying it's easy. It's hard. But this is where practice comes in. This is where, like when you talked about men who are too busy to do anything for themselves, if you can work daily on regulating your nervous system and unwinding your nervous system, then you have greater capacity to be with, a pain in the ass coworker, with a screaming child, with an upset, partner, spouse or partner. And so now you're training your child in what it means to be a deep, regulated, heart-centered, and stable man, right? To be the stability, because the masculine is the all-pervading space of consciousness, of presence. If we use the masculine feminine dynamic idea, when you're holding that wide open field of stability, like the mountain, right? You're rooted, you're grounded. There's still plenty swirling around the mountain. There's chaos, there's storms, there's lightning, there's floods, there's, animals killing each other. There's all kinds of chaotic energy happening. But this is about being able to practice to ground the nervous system and regulate yourself in a way that others feel safe and held by you. And that's real strength.
Right. Yeah, that's powerful.
That's masculinity. When we look at awakened masculinity, not just loud, performative, controlling, what we see so much from the pundits online where they talk about men have lost their masculinity. Well, in a way, yes, men have lost their, they haven't been initiated. there's no real training for men, although there is real training. We're out here training. There's plenty other men's work guys out there doing this work. Maybe you're in a spiritual tradition. Maybe you practice Zen or Tibetan Buddhism, or maybe you're a Taoist or whatever it is. There's plenty, great martial arts teachers. This is nothing new that I'm telling you. This is ancient wisdom with a little modern twist on it.
Oh, we've been working for quite some time together, so I'm a testimony to that.
Can I talk to that? I mean, I won't reveal too much, but I mean,
please don't.
Yeah, you came in like any other man. You wanted to work on yourself, and you had all the same stuff that I had, that we all had, and you did the work on yourself, and you dedicated, a good chunk of time. I work one-on-one with men, and we did that work, and it wasn't anything I did. It was you and your dedication, and you manifested this most beautiful. Now your work's not done, but you manifested your vision in a really healthy, beautiful way.
And you helped with that. That was really, really very special for me. I didn't expect that when I first met you, but I came from a very lost place. I was really hitting rock bottom, and I wondered, do men really have to hit rock bottom to start like a huge change in their life, or is there like a lot of people you mentioned earlier, like they go through life kind of like on autopilot? But how do you get out of that autopilot without crashing down and hitting rock bottom? Is there a way out without being on the ground first?
I think we all have to go through that. In the Sufi tradition, they call it going through the tunnel of madness. And most men, or a lot of men, go through that right after their Saturn return. We're at 27, 28, 29. By the time they hit 30, they're no longer doing childish things. They're ready to start building something. Men who are lucky enough to come into the work in their 30s, like I was, that's really good luck. That's really a blessing, because you get an earlier start. Some guys don't start till they're 70 years old, and they don't have all those years ahead to work. But yeah, those 30s, when you hit your 30s, that's when your stuff is really, really surfacing. All your crap, all your wounds, all the shadow, all the darkness, all the self-hatred, all the outward blame on life and other people, and it's their fault. And that just creates so much suffering, because we haven't learned how to be in the tension. We haven't learned how to be in the tension of life. And so I'm not saying necessarily that someone has to hit rock bottom, but the saying that sticks with me throughout all my years is, you suffer until you've suffered enough, right? Like when you get to a place of absolute suffering, no matter what your addiction is, if it's alcohol or whether it's drugs or whether it's porn, whatever it is, you're suffering because you're not fulfilled, because we know nothing outside of us causes satisfaction. Momentary moments of excitement when you get a new computer, or you get a
dopamine hit,
right? You get a new lover, when UPS pulls up to the driveway, and we're chronic shoppers, but nothing outside of us creates satisfaction. It comes from within. And if within, as Hafiz says, if within you is a loaded gun, how can you know peace? Meaning, if within you is just, you're filled with turmoil, wounds, your father telling you were a piece of shit, one too many times when you were a kid, or, your mother blaming her pain on you, and because maybe the father went away and the mother depended on the son to provide her, like she secretly married the son. There's this emotional manipulation. I'm just pointing out a couple scenarios for men and the issues that they may have. At some point, hopefully you're going to say, wow, I'm really confused, I'm really suffering, I'm working as hard as I can to make my life good, and I just keep having obstacle after obstacle after obstacle.
I've suffered enough.
And everyone's image or path is different. I'm not saying it has to be men's work, but hopefully you're going to do something. Hopefully you're going to at least start some talk therapy. At the very least, you're going to talk to a wise friend, like, hey man, I never tell anyone this, but sometimes I wish I was dead. Like just starting in some way, in some capacity, to claim like, I'm worth more than this. I know I have value. I know I have brilliance, and I'm not able to actualize it because I have such a hard time in life and I suffer so much. There is support. There is guidance. You among hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I've been involved in the growth, health and wellness, spiritual work for, over 30 years. And I've seen countless people have transformations and breakthroughs, and it never stops. I'm not anywhere at all near the end of, like, I have all kinds of stuff that I work on all the time.
Well, but that's hard to believe because you put so much energy in your growth.
We all, the way I look at it is when you've been doing as long as I have, you have the tools. You can't make excuses and say, I don't know what to do. You have the tools, you know how to practice. And so then you just have to go practice. Even if it's something as simple as, waking up and smiling and doing gratitude.
Yeah. I read somewhere if you express gratitude, you can't be depressed or anxious at the same time.
It's quite difficult to hold gratitude and aversion to life at the same time. Yeah. But that's a great question you just asked around, do men have to, do people, men in particular, because women or feminine beings, I should say, are naturally more relational. They tend to connect. Their nervous systems are entrained differently. They're naturally more relational, right? Men are more solitary creatures and tend to hold things
they go to their cave and have to figure it out themselves first. Correct. Before they share it. Yeah.
But there is also another way that men have been doing for thousands of years, and they come into the group with other men, and they when men enter into a space together, it's a very different experience than entering into a co-ed space with feminine beings, because there's a biological shift that happens when there's a woman in the room.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I agree. One thing I've done for almost 20 years, I don't think I ever told you this, but I'm meeting once a year. I'm meeting 10, 12 male friends, and it's only male. And we go to a lake and go camping and do wildfires and go, go fishing and stuff like that. And it's a lot of female friends always try to get in, and we never invited them in. And they were like, we can bring you another time, but that weekend is sacred for us. And
women need their space, and men need their space. And imagine being in a space where we actually give feedback to each other on our level of consciousness, presence, depth, heart that we're living with. Like that is, iron against iron sharpens, right? And so like we have that, like the masculine with the masculine deepens. And so when you're with other men in this place, you access a depth that maybe in your regular life that you normally try to avoid because it's too painful, it's too difficult, it's too confusing. And it's just so profound. It's the only reason why I've been able to create the life I have is because of that.
Yeah. Zat, that's beautiful. Before we get to the end, I have two more questions to ask you. The first question is, how can my audience, my listeners, how can we be of service to you? Like, what can we do that benefits you, your practice, you personally, whatever there is, and you can take your time with answering. No rush.
Wow. That's a great question, Simon.
Well, that's probably something that I learned from you, trying to be of service and
come do the work. How can you support me? Come do your own work.
Yeah.
Really.
That's cool.
When the phrase I use is use me up. Like when people come and they want to do the work, I feel just like when an artist creates a piece of art and someone says, I love that. I want to listen to that music. I want to use that music in my film, or I want to put that in my home and look at that beautiful piece of art. Your art, your efforts are being received and used. So yeah, come do your work. Come let me do my art with you. So we have our men's retreat in Mexico. And then for any men that are needing some big shifts in their life, that want to actualize their fullest power and potential, and whether that's in your purpose, in your career, in your relationship, that's the work I do one-on-one with men, so they can always inquire and have a conversation with me. I help men become leaders, because that's my greatest interest, is to create more leaders in the world who then spread their leadership wisdom, just like you're doing. I mean, this is what you're doing. This is leadership.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna tag your name and your website in the show notes. And we have a tradition in our podcast where the last guest leaves a question for the new guest, not knowing who that guest is. And the question that was left for you is, and you can also take your time with answering this, is: which maybe brilliant idea did you give up on that, looking back, you wish you had pursued?
Ask it one more time.
Which maybe brilliant idea did you give up on that, looking back, you wish you had pursued?
Well, I would say, I'm not sure. I'll give a partial answer. I was a musician in my early life, and music was my love. You know, that's all I did. I was in a rock band, and I played on stages, and then I became more focused in conscious spiritual music. But I have, for the most part, set that aside to just focus on this work. And I know there's still a deep hunger in me to be up there sharing that art. And so that's something that's still kind of under the surface, always, that I'm tussling with, that word tussle, kind of tussling with when and if the time will come for me to. So my brilliant idea was to change the world through music, when I was in like 7th grade.
Wow. Okay. You started early.
I was like, I wanted to do that. So I would say that that's still there. It's still a little bit of a pain point in there. But of course, there's much satisfaction in the work I'm doing. I'm a musician. I played music my entire life, and
that's cool.
And I still long for it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks for being so honest and sharing your wisdom and being here with me.
It has been my pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. Hope we can do it again. Yeah.
Das war Hungry. Ich hoffe, die Folge hat euch inspiriert und neue Impulse gegeben. Wir sehen und hören uns beim nächsten Mal. Bis dahin, stay hungry.
Can you feel the heat? Some more fire. Hold on. Feel the beat. You can see it in my eyes and the lines that I speak.